Welcome to Conscious Eye, living in authentic connection and harmony with self, others, and the world. Featuring Ravi and Savitri.
Hi, Savitri.
Well, here we are today, and I would ask you how your week went. But first, I'd like to mention to everyone that we did all have a week, and I think we all know what that means. So, because we are bringing authentic topics forward, we would like to give you a heads up that we will be talking about the topics of the week and hope that it is a way to start some of the healing. So, welcome everyone.
Yeah, so just this will be an episode that covers sensitive topics. So that's, trigger warning to anyone who needs that up front. So
Mhm.
it was a very strange week. Well, we had a lot going on. It started with an eclipse.
That's right. Yeah. And we're right between the two eclipses.
Mm-hmm.
So, next week we have the solar eclipse. So, the energies between those eclipses, and we always have, they come in twos, we
Mm-hmm.
always have that. But some of the other dynamics of the planets moving through the cosmos have contributed to that. And with the north and south nodes being across the sky from Aquarius, the global service oriented sign of the zodiac, and Leo, the location of power and leadership and structure, we are experiencing some interesting times.
Well, yes, and let me walk that back for listeners a little bit. So, and bring everyone on board. Eclipses are a time of endings and transformation,
Mhm.
and they can be violent in many ways, emotionally, mentally. They can be very traumatizing events. And as a collective, we experienced an incredibly traumatizing event that signifies and is a harbinger of great change in many ways, on many levels. Nobody can really, deny that fact that, and I think we should just, speak what we're speaking on. But we had a political assassination in the United States this week.
It was
uh,
stunning,
in the mid
shocking.
in the middle of two eclipses. And so what does this mean? I mean, I think that's what a lot of people, there's a lot of fear of what will happen. Why did it happen? What will happen to our country? Much less, than the individual side of things that were happening. So just to walking that back, an eclipse, this happened at the time of an eclipse, a time of great change, transformation, and oftentimes trauma if we're not quite aware of what's going on and how to happen. And you mentioned the nodes. And I'm not sure if all of our listeners know the meaning of the nodes. Can you go into that a little bit? Because the
Yes,
husband is playing into this a lot. So
sure.
yeah, that would be
Yeah.
great.
The nodes are really a location in the celestial cosmos, the map of the sky, where the sun's perceived pathway around the earth, which it isn't, but the pathway we see is called the ecliptic, and the actual orbital path of the moon come into an intersection in two locations. We have a north and we have a south location. And each of those are responsible for when the Earth, the sun, and the moon line up, the sun or the moon, depending on where the planets are in relation to each other, are eclipsed and they go into the shadow of one of the others. And so this, for the lunar eclipse, was a total eclipse from Rahu. And Rahu is the north node where there are so many options. There's no discretion about what comes in. So when you mentioned transformation, it was as if we were being bombarded with one change after another. Transformations started piling up, and they might have just started small, kind of delicate, manageable. But sometimes, like what we found this week, they pile up and come to a head. Rahu is the head of the nodes. And when it comes to the head, it becomes extremely volatile. When we come to our solar eclipse on, I believe, the 21st of this month, we'll be coming into the location where the tail of this snake will line up. That's that intersection at the south point that I mentioned, the intersection of the ecliptic and the new moon's orbit. And that particular location is about karma, and where transformation from karma really begins to become present, manifest, and get our attention. So we're in between those two right now. And I also want to mention that starting at the lunar eclipse, we had, and we're still in, the fortnight of Pitru Paksha, which is the honoring of our ancestors, where some would say the veil is thin and the ancestral karma that we here on earth have been given the accountability to help resolve for them, to free them, to help provide moksha for the ancestors, is right there. Again, we're right in the middle of it, between the two eclipses.
And moksha meaning liberation.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And so this is a time of, again, an opportunity for us individually and on a collective level to transform, to see some of that karmic energy through, to do some inner work and some work as a collective together, which is why no matter what perspective you're coming from, I think we hear all sides saying we need empathy, we need compassion, we need unity, but it seems that seems to mean different things to many different people at
We
this
all
time.
have different perspectives about it. That's right.
So there's that individual transformation that we have to go through and also work through as a collective, and that's a really that's our work we got cut out
Yeah,
for.
it really is. And, we had talked about karma, and we'll go into that in our next episode with a lot of depth to really talk about, how does it work? What happens with it? And who owns it? Where does it come from? All of that in our next episode. But let's think about how this week may be an example of that. And I'll just add that as a question. As you travel through your own internal relationship with yourself around the events of this week. We had the assassination on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we had the remembrance of 9/11. And before we started recording this morning, Ravi, you mentioned something about how there are so many different ways that people are looking at this. and I don't want to step on your words, but could you talk a little more about the perspectives of celebration versus grief?
Well, yes, and before I do, I just want to also mention that we've experienced a lot of loss in recent months. I mean, on this very same day, children lost their lives in another school shooting. I do want to recognize the Hortmans from Minnesota who were also assassinated. So I do want to acknowledge that as well. And maybe we can use those examples as, a backdrop of reality to look upon, because
Mhm.
we do seem to have our, we can see there are individual reactions, like you mentioned previously, there are collective reactions,
Mhm.
but on that individual level, I'm noticing patterns of responses, yet also condemn the actions that we saw projected from this person, right? That were very harmful. And there are those who also condemn the act, but canonize this person as something uh, to be, as a person of honor, a person of I don't even want to use the word intelligence, because I believe that Charlie Kirk was a person of intelligence, but a person of integrity and honor would not speak in the ways that he did publicly, which were highly influential to many people,
Yes.
to many people.
Mhm.
And although, again, I think I hear a lot of the reactions that I hear are, well, he didn't deserve to die. No, right? Nobody, I'm not going to say nobody's saying that. I'm sure some people are saying that.
Mhm.
But can we, this is a complex, this isn't an either or. This isn't a black and white topic. This has many nuances and complicated feelings, and it's okay to hold those feelings at the same time.
It's a lesson for us in non-duality, really, to be able to hold the both and, as you mentioned, and as we go through those various thoughts and emotions that we personally have, these generate karma for us and ultimately for the collective. So there's a lot of energy being exuded right now in thought forms and in heart forms, where we have heart energy and thought energy that's being poured out into our collective. At the same time, when we start thinking about, as you mentioned, an honorable message, authentic versus influential, and maybe a not so honorable message, we have different ways that pop for us. You know, we think, well, that message is no longer coming from this individual on the earth. And depending on your perspective, that will bring you a different response. All the responses that we have and share when there's a death of some type, especially one that's so sudden and shocking, is that we are holding that sense of compassion at the same time, holding perhaps a very large burden of disagreement with the individual's life and message that they brought to us. Others are not. Others are holding a burden of a message that they are now mourning is gone. So we all have different perspectives in this. But when we get down to it, it's been a traumatic experience for everyone. Regardless of what our perspective is, we have a personal and a collective trauma that just occurred. And if we juxtapose it to the next day, remembrance of 9/11, uh, there were things that happened there that are mimicking what we're feeling now. There were areas of the world that were quite pleased with the 9/11 experience, and there were people in the United States that were not. So there was a division there, just like we have a division now within our own country, as we try to come forward in a neutral way and say, okay, how are we going to remedy or ameliorate some of these experiences that people are having that are providing divisive perspectives?
Well, I think when knowledge is
Mhm,
yeah, and so we have, we can look at it in an intellectual way, or we can look at it, through the heart. So we have
mhm.
to, I found my systems arguing with each other
Right.
over the week.
Mhm,
So we have to find our own balance within ourselves. Can we live heart over head? But we have to acknowledge, and I this is, where I'm also going to say warning, that these are some of the things that people have not heard. So
mhm,
where we really are living in some dual realities here.
mhm,
So
mhm,
we all know we're experiencing Maya, the illusion of
mhm.
reality, just by
That's right.
being human.
Mhm,
This little performance that we're all playing together. As Shakespeare said, all the world is a play, right? Is that who said
mhm.
that? Did I get that right?
Yeah, a stage, the word world,
All the
I've heard
world
it
is
in
a
a play.
stage. Thank
Mhm,
you. So, so we're all living veiled by that illusion on some level in some ways, but over the past, almost decade, would you say that has been lifting for some, and we're seeing the maybe beyond that veil in some ways.
mhm,
So, and others are still really under that Maya, under the illusion. And we have, when we were growing up, we grew up in the analog age.
mhm. We did. It was great.
We had only so many channels on the TV, and only so many radio stations to listen to our music on. And we were all getting the same message at the same time, or, that messaging was split between very few channels. And then today we live in the digital age
Mhm,
with streaming platforms on real time, and we're all getting bombarded by messaging all the time from many different avenues. We're really understanding what algorithms are and how they work, and how we are the algorithm of our own life. All that to say, I think it's understandable the view that some people can hold of a person if you don't see all sides. We
mhm,
don't always see all sides of a picture, of we don't see from all angles. When we do learn, however, of a new angle, really being able to heal is integrating that, recognizing how that fits in us and in the collective, and working through that. So if you never heard Charlie Kirk say, I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic Black woman. I wonder if she's there because of her excellence or because of affirmative action. Or if you never heard him say, Islam is not compatible with Western civilization, Islam is the sword the left is using to slit the throat of America. If you never saw him lunge out of his seat during a debate to berate somebody or degrade them or dehumanize them, then it is understandable how, in the moment of learning about his death, you wanted to canonize him as a person.
Mhm.
However, we live in an age of technology and awareness, and once you learn something, we must integrate that knowledge, process it, because it can be painful, and that can be a very painful process,
Mhm.
and learn how to move forward in a new and different way, rather than doubling down and saying, perhaps, this is a person we need to idolize or mourn collectively in a very personal and intimate way, and demand that from us as a society.
I agree with all of that. And as you were laying it out so succinctly and clearly, I started thinking about how people believe and how they learn to believe. And the whole persona of charisma, and how an individual who is an articulate and powerful speaker can sell their message to people that want to hear and be infused with that energy. It's almost as if they want to be seen. And once that happens, and I agree with you 100%, when we learn new things, part of our dharma is to be discerning about it, look at it, feel it, bring it in, test it out, and integrate it, especially if it is a little painful, because likely we're faced with things that we may have had disagreements about every day. We're faced with new things that challenge our belief systems and the way that we walk our path every day. What happens though is that there's a comfort zone for people that are deeply mired in Maya because of a strong belief system. And there's almost as if there's and I mean to use this in a very careful way, it's almost as if there's an love energy that they have established for the message, for the individual, and they don't always hear the tone. They don't always hear the ramifications, and they don't always think about whether it's truth or not. It just feels good to them because it's
Right.
that energy. And we've heard that quite a bit over the last maybe year and a half, 2 years. It's like, oh, they're just saying that. We don't really mean it. They're just saying that. And then we come to find that maybe what was said is starting to actualize. So those quotes you brought up and those images really help us juxtapose the whole idea of political violence, the whole idea of an individual being shot down, and the death that surrounded that. And so we're able to begin to think about a balance internally and maybe not feel guilty about where we land, because those two things, so diametrically opposed, if we can bring them together in any way, we can begin to create a healing within ourselves, which then, as we've talked about in our previous episodes, then radiates out and helps provide healing to the collective.
That does mean taking an honest look and doing the hard work and doing that integration of the darker sides of things. like you mentioned, I do I do want to go back to what you said about him being a articulate speaker.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he was, very good at influencing people
Right.
through the
Mm-hmm.
manipulation of words
Mm-hmm.
that very often did not make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, or come from a place of reality. So, and there was, there is, I guess I'm responding to the argument of him, being a respectful speaker when we're, dehumanizing others or devaluing others as humans. There's no level of respect there. But
Mm-hmm.
to address that point of when we get new information, if this is maybe the first time we're learning something and it conflicts so deeply with our personally held beliefs, that's terrifying. That's
It
a
is.
so there's the individual trauma. So we all experience this collective trauma, witnessing something that we should never see as especially publicized on through media platforms or through the media. And because it's desensitizing as much as it is traumatic. So we experience that, but we also have to face our own inner paradigm shift or deny ourselves that paradigm shift. And that brings with it a whole nother
It
spin.
does.
So it's our responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to take this occurrence and determine, like you said, we have to discern through Dharma how we want to move forward individually and as a collective.
Yeah. And
And
oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
yeah, well,
I'm
and,
excited
and
about what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
it takes more than lip service and words. And that is something, a pattern that it keeps coming up. And I think we see it in our current administration. Um, we, uh, there are no files. We're going to release the files. There are no files. There never were any files. And words lose their meaning because we know that what's really behind them. We know that the words are the Maya. We know the words are the illusion. So that to say, when you had mentioned it's more than the messaging, it's what's behind it. It's how
Yes.
it's the feeling that we attach to it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that works with both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if we are still lost in the Maya, we hear the words and we believe them without, believing what's really right in front of us. We have hundreds of women that we could listen to and believe, but we listen to words without feeling the energy. Or sometimes we hear a message and that resonates with a feeling in us. We're not hearing the words because of that feeling that we feel in us.
Yes. Yes. That's that love energy I mentioned, where you're feeling it come, even though it is wrapped in Maya and maybe not so authentic. It's meant for a purpose of um, driving home the message, so to speak, right? And so you're right. You fall in love with that energy and you don't hear what's said. And when someone later says, "Oh, did you hear that person say this?" You're like, "No, I was thinking a lot, or I was feeling a lot about what was happening." Well, that goes again both ways. You can be feeling wonderful about the energy and maybe the words, and you can be feeling horrified
Mhm.
about the energy and the words. And that's where we are, I think, today. To not to get simplistic about it, but it drives right down the middle to our sociological value system, our morals, and we're being tested. We're being tested daily in so many different ways.
We are a printout of what we've been working from. If we want something new to print out, we have to do something differently today, now,
Mhm,
as a
mhm,
collective, as we come
mhm,
together. So what is that
mhm.
going to look like?
Yeah,
What is that going to feel like? How are we
yeah,
going to get through that divide and remember who we are?
that's right. We get back to that remembering who we are, and that comes from within. It's who we are as a soul in a body here on the planet in these moments in time. Yeah.
Incarnating together. Any thoughts to wrap up? It was a pretty wild week. I
Wild.
feel you mentioned something earlier before we started recording, I forget how you put it into words, but it's just like there's just a bubbling over of emotions and thoughts and tangles of feelings, and it's okay to have all of those, because I've been struggling myself to sort them out and acknowledge them and look at them without as much, without judgment. I can't say I'm not gonna say I've been flawless at it, but really working to do that practice of acknowledging what comes up and just taking a look at it and going, hey, come sit at the table. Why are you here? Let's talk about that. Because I'm sure we've had some feelings that some of us are going, "Ooh, I didn't know I'd feel that way." Or,
Right. That's what I said, about feeling grief and feeling guilt at the same time, because those two things show up when we are stressed in this dynamic way. So when we started this morning, we started it with a different plan and agreed that acknowledging where we all are, all of you that are out there listening to this, and where we are, hopefully we brought a balanced and somewhat neutral perspective to this time that we've been together. And we hold you all in the deepest spiritual sense of love.
and compassion, and be compassionate with yourself. Take a deep breath, do some practice, go, get outside, go for a walk. I know that sounds trite, but remember who and where you are, because there's a lot of distraction and a lot out there to pull our energy in different directions. And so take that deep breath, give yourself some grace, and take a step back and allow yourself to hold maybe many different feelings at the same time, because
Mhm.
regardless of how we feel about this, it may be revealing how we're feeling about other people that we love, that
Mhm.
we admire, that we respect, that we may be seeing in a different light. So this is a complex time. It's a really great time to be compassionate with yourself, and with others. And if it's difficult to be compassionate with others, then take a step back and do some practice and, do some breath work. And that's completely understandable. No judgment there. Um, so just time for lots of compassion and maybe a little bit of quietude and, coming together compassionately when we're ready. So we'll
Well,
be.
thank you for being with us today, and like and subscribe. That way, oh, and ring the bell. That way you get a notification when the next episode comes out, and know that our next episode will be about karma. And we've been talking about bringing that out for a couple of episodes. It's going to happen.
Mhm.
So thank you all.
Yeah. be kind, be careful, and you know, communicate with us, communicate with each other. We'd love to hear from you. And let's just keep showing up and holding space for each other
Yes.
all the time. So thanks for being here, Savitri. Thank you for this time this morning. Satnam.
Namaste.